We are going to look a little bit at TruView Live network monitoring as a service, and we're going to get into a little bit of a demo now. Talk about how the product works in a little bit more depth. Okay? I've already signed up for an account. We're going to skip all that. That's pretty boring. I've logged in. I've logged in under a company that already exists, already has data, just to save us some time today. And I've already got tests created, and I've already got pulses deployed, okay? So that's the context. We just logged in, and when I log in, I land on this page right here. It's called the Enterprise Dashboard. The Enterprise Dashboard, by default, shows me the current data in the upper right-hand corner, although I can change that and see data for any point in time. But it's going to show me the current data for all the locations that I'm monitoring down the left-hand side. All the locations I'm monitoring from, I should say, and all the services I'm monitoring to across the top. Okay? And we're going to focus right now just on web services, and we're going to hold off on the VoIP for later. Okay? So right now we're just going to show you all those web services. Some filters across the top. Let me filter by test type. The quality of the service or location if I want to focus on problems and not see all the green, or by a name if I want to search for that. But I can see this data right away that by and large everything's fine. I have a couple things that are performing slowly, they're yellow, and I have a couple things that are performing badly or actually having tests failing, and those are red, right? Pretty simple, don't even probably have to explain it. You probably got it right away. The red, the yellow, and the green are controlled by thresholds. We're going to get to those. So you can define these rules by which we decide what is okay, what is poor, and what is bad or just down. So we'll get to that in a second. But the Enterprise Dashboard, again, gives me one-time quick picture of everything. So we're going to drill down on one of these, and we're going to choose this compassion service. This is a not-for-profit group in our hometown in Colorado. And we have their website set up as something that we're monitoring. And as we open this up, we see again down the left-hand side all of the locations we're monitoring from, and everything's that nice green that tells me that everything's good right now. But as I look across to the right, I see these strip charts that show me the status of this service from each location over time. And I can see that it hasn't all been good. I've had some issues of slowness. In particular, it seems like it's from my global locations that I've had issues, while domestic United States locations have not seen any issues in performance. So that's interesting. I can see the average response time and the availability. So right away I know we're not having any issues with this service being unavailable. If we're having any issues, they're minor and it's related to performance. So we're going to switch over to the Performance tab and scroll out a little bit on here on our nice big monitors or our desks. It's very attractive to see all of them at once. On projectors, obviously, often we don't have the resolution. So to kind of give you an idea of what you probably would see at your desk, you go to this performance view, and again, this is all one service we're monitoring. And so what this is showing is the performance from all the locations that we're monitoring from. And the chart is a performance chart. It's what we call an end-user response time breakdown chart. And we're breaking down that performance, that total response time, into its constituent parts. And those parts that we break it down to are the DNS lookup time, the network delay, thank you, the network delay, SSL connect time, client delay, application delay, and server delay. And I don't want to get too caught up in the definitions of those. We can talk a little bit about them if you have any clarification questions, but we do have an article on our support site at TruViewLive.com that explains those in more detail, in complete detail, hopefully. So we can see where our problems lie. If Jason, if you could zoom out on those again, we'll see if we can see a pattern as we look at these. A lot of orange. I'm seeing a lot of orange. That's server delay. A little bit of blue here. But if we look at it more closely, the blue, which is the application delay, is always about the same. And if anything's variable, and if anything's changing over time from location to location, it's probably the server delay. And the server delay is often and largely comprised of the size of the response and the distance, right? So it's kind of your latency times the size of the response. So as I look at these, I don't really see necessarily a network problem. I don't really necessarily see an application problem either. I see the normal effect of data taking longer to get to Dublin than it takes to get to Colorado Springs, okay? So this is kind of how I look at these. We can see some DNS spikes up there on the Rockville location, where if we looked in more detail, we'd probably see more DNS problems. It's a common problem. If we were having times where things were down, it would be evident in these charts. But obviously the point of these is to help you quickly, at a glance, get an idea of what the problem might be. You see lots and lots of blue. That's application delay, and that's a slow app, right? So the end user response time charts help me quickly see what's going on from all the locations that I'm monitoring from. But I can drill down another level as well. So we'll do that. And this is where I get to what we call our test log. So this is every test that's been run from the selected location, in this case, to the selected service, right? So we define a test, we define success criteria. And so this test log showing me all the times the test ran, if the test succeeded or failed, and then those key performance indicators of DNS, server, client, network, app, SSL, delay, okay? So I can see all of those, and in this case, hey, all of our tests are going great. Response times are great. You know, I don't see any grand issues here. But if I did, I'd be seeing error messages in yellows and reds. And so it's easy to see where I've got my issues. And again, on all these screens right now, I'm looking at current data, but I can go back in time and look at what happened last Thursday at 4, because somebody emailed me and said they had a problem last Thursday at 4. So I can drill back in time if need be. So we started at the enterprise dashboard. We're going to go back up a couple levels here. Not everybody wants to see everything. There's going to be the business owner that's responsible for a given SaaS that's used. He probably is more concerned about looking things from a services perspective. So we're going to go over to the services dashboard.
I have some questions about the displays you just had up.
Yeah.
So I saw when you drilled down at Compassion to the next display, there was a site down towards the bottom that looked like it had worse time characteristics than one of the others.
Yeah.
And yet it showed all green.
Okay. So the green, you mean green like normal?
No yellow. Yes,
okay.
There was no yellow, but some of the other sites showed a combination of yellow, and they had better performance.
So it depends on what's happening.
Tokyo is 1.8 seconds down here, whereas Rockville is 1.139 seconds.
Yeah.
And Rockville shows up yellow, but Tokyo is all green.
Yeah.
So I couldn't follow.
Is the response
what it was telling me?
Is the response time column current time right now?
The response time is in this case we're looking at current. It's the most recent response time.
So it's green.
So what this
right
chart is really showing you is what's happened over time.
Current should be yellow.
But in the past,
is what's happened over a period of time, and that's why you're seeing some yellow, and why that yellow doesn't necessarily correspond with that column. In this case, again, because we're looking at current data, this is also green. And that's just telling me that right now things are good and within our configured thresholds. Does that make sense?
I didn't understand.
Yeah, so that's past.
Okay.
So I can see that we've had slowness, but right now Rockville's pretty good.
In other words, Rockville has always sucked for response time.
That's right. Rockville has always sucked.
Somebody did something recently to make it better.
That's right. That's right. You've got it. That's it, exactly.
Okay, so
I think there's some confusing maybe for clarity there. It looks like the chart is left to right.
It is.
Even though the number sits to the left. And so while it's yellow right next to the number, when you look all the way to the right, it's green, and that's the most recent result.
Yes, I got that.
I was looking at the same thing, seeing that it was yellow right next to the number. I'm like, okay, that's odd, but okay.
Right.
I'm following that now.
Okay.
You're right.
One more thing while we're on here. For example, Rockville showing 1.139 and green. Individually at a location, you set the threshold for what's good? So,
you set it as a service right now.
For the service.
For the service right now. That is something that we're looking to.
So they're all held to the same standard of what's good?
They're all held to the same standard, that's correct.
Is that baseline like static or is that learned?
It's a static baseline, yeah.
Okay, so
it's a threshold that we'll set, and we'll get to that screen in a few minutes.
And that's per app. You have some sort of threshold
and
per
app. And that's per app, that's correct.
That you understand, okay.
That's right.
Do you provide any hooks? Like I'm guessing, I think I'm wondering what the typical integration with this is the target use case for you for somebody literally looking at the screen, or is there a way for me to reach into this and basically get an event-driven kind of thing where if it exceeds the threshold, I get a notification?
Well, there is. So two responses to your question. I think where I thought you were going was APIs. So there is that, but there's also notifications and alerts. So we can configure who gets notified in what event, when things are down, when things are performing poorly.
Yeah.
So we do have notifications, and we'll touch on that in a few minutes.
Notification via API is what I'm getting at.
We also have an API. So email notifications if you subscribe to them through the product, or an API if you want to pull the data and do your own stuff with it. Okay. So we have an API that's available to customers, and they're given credentials and documentation, and they can write their own stuff. And we do already have at least one customer that is deploying this to their customers. They're a service provider, and so they're not going to have their customers log on, although they could. They're going to pull the data out and present it to their customers in the way they see fit.
Okay, does the API also support webhooks?
The API does not support webhooks now.
Okay.
How long do you store the data?
We store the real-time data for 30 days.
30
we store
days.
rolled-up data for forever.
Okay.
So 2 other quick questions. Do you support like a traceroute test from a probe?
We're going to get to a traceroute test.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you, for like HTTP, HTTPS, do you monitor things like time to first byte?
Time to first byte is how those are the types of things that we use to break down those metrics.
So the server delay, for example, might be.
That's right. Time to the amount of time it takes to get the entire response, which would require knowing the time to first byte. Yes.
Yeah, because I mean specifically the difference between I got a request, I've acted it, fine, and then I sit there for 5 seconds, and then I give you the data. Well, the time for the whole request is 5.5 seconds or something.
Right.
But 5 of it was spent waiting while the server figured out what the heck it was going to send.
That's right.
And that's, for a lot of the apps we do, that's kind of important to figure out when our servers are crashing.
That's right.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And on the other display that you had the individual graphs of response times.
Yeah, on the performance tab.
Performance. It would be really nice if there was a way to say, normalize all of these.
Yes, good comment.
Okay. Because I'm looking at 0.5 seconds versus 1.0 seconds.
Yes.
And the 1.0 is, yeah, it's a little bit taller, but not significant, not twice as tall.
Yeah. So if the product planners had their way, it'd already be done. So I have to take the blame.
Numbers.
Yeah, it's my fault. Engineering manager, we're getting to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and this is the same like with the trace route. You almost kind of want to be able to set your threshold being deviation from the mean.
Right.
Some mean that you say this is a nominal status, please make this the mean. But that deviation is often what gives away that there's a problem rather than an absolute number. So
thank you.
That would be nice in the future.
Yeah. Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, so there's other dashboards, services and locations, and we'll just show you those real quick because they're not that interesting, but some users don't care for all that information. They're responsible for a given service. They want to be able to log in and look at a screen and see how things are. So this is a services-centric view of that data, taking away some of the complexity of the enterprise dashboard. And we have another one that's just like it. And we'll switch over to that really quickly, and that's the locations dashboard. So again, somebody responsible for the performance at a given location logs in, comes to this dashboard, sees how things are going, can drill back to a specific point in time and drill down to those other screens that we've already looked at, see those state strip charts, those performance charts, and those test logs, okay? But dashboards is where we see this data, or we can pull it via the API that we already talked about. But let's step back for a second and let's look at how the tests are set up. Okay, so we're going to go.
So can I?
Yes.
Can I keep the URL that shows me just the red, which I assume is failure, and yellow, which is degraded?
That's correct.
So is there a URL that I can do to look at just those? I have 500 sites.
Yeah.
Okay, and I want to know about the 5 that are in trouble.
Yeah. So we can filter on this page for just our degradeds and criticals and turn off our normals. The system's going to remember that's your preferred view.
Okay.
And it's not going to revert to some other view on you. And you pop into this page, which has its own distinct URL, and right away you know where your issues are.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to go and we're going to create a new test. TruView Live includes the concept of groups. Some users are admins, some users are read-only. So this user that we're logged in as is an admin. He's going to go to the monitored services function. We're going to go to create a new web test, and we're going to set up a test. Go ahead. Okay. We've already got 20 set up. We're going to hit create new up there at the top. And the application is going to let us create a new test. So types of tests. I mean, obviously, these are all HTTP. They're web tests, gets and posts. We support basic things that people are going to look for, like NTLM authentication. Basic authentication helps you test internal stuff, usually SharePoint, maybe APIs that require basic authentication, stuff like that. So a couple simple authentication options. We can do gets and we can do posts. We can control the HTTP headers. We can control the post parameters. We're going to do a little test here that tests a website you might be familiar with. So we're going to test its login screen. We don't have real credentials for it, but that's OK, because all we want to do is hit this thing and make sure it's returning us an expected response. OK, so we're going to post some parameters to it, bad credentials, and we're going to look for this website to respond with a 200 OK and with the text invalid username. Valid username. OK, well, that's all right. Yeah, invalid username. All right, well, hey, that's OK. Go ahead and type it. We'll hit it again. So what happens when we hit that verify button is TruView Live shoots that test out to all those pulses, right? So I've got pulses all over the world in this organization. We already saw their names, Rockville, Maryland, and Colorado Springs, and Tokyo, and Singapore, and Dublin. And so he hits verify. The information shoots out to pulses. All those pulses run this new test configuration, return the results to TruView Live. Takes 3 or 4 seconds, so we get a success on the screen, and we know we've set up a valid test. Okay? So we can hit save, and once we hit save, now it's not just going to be a temporary test that TruView Live is asking the pulses to run once. We're going to put it on a schedule. Where is it? Down here. OK, we're going to run that every minute. We're just going to overwhelm this website. No, we're not. Really, I'm kidding. Every minute, we're just going to do one simple post. It's not going to tax this website at all from the number of locations we have. If we wanted to, we could have set up that test to run from specific locations. In this case, we only have a few pulses in this organization, so we just set all. But every minute, we're going to do that post to that website. So very easy to set up a new service that we want to monitor. Maybe it requires a little bit of knowledge about how websites work if you want to do something like a post test. But more often than not, it's a simple get. There's not much to it. And almost anybody can create one of these tests. The tests go out to all the pulses, and it just becomes a part of the regular testing schedule that these pulses are doing. All pulse types, hardware, software, global pulses. OK? So we've got that done. We're going to go now, and while those pulses run that test a few times, we're going to look at the trace route that I told you about earlier. We're going to come back to pulses when we show how a new company starts up. TruView Live has two halves to it. It has the monitoring side, which we've kind of already been looking at, where these tests are run on a regular basis, and you view the data via the API or online on our dashboards. But we also have some test tools that do a little bit more of an in-depth test and give you a little bit more information than we can do in our monitoring test. More or less, because when we're monitoring, it's a lot of data. We can't store, tons of data about every single monitoring test instance. But on these one-off tests, you have a problem, you're seeing an issue somewhere, you can run one of these detailed tests and you get more details. So we'll just pick an existing test. We'll run it from all of our locations. If we didn't have these locations, you'll see some overlap here. But when you set these up on your company, you'd have all of your offices. And then we would also offer you TruView Live locations that you could test from as well. And you probably wouldn't have that overlap. But we'll hit run test. And what's going to happen is we're going to, again, send this instruction out to all the pulses. We're going to say run a detailed test to this website, to this service with these success or failure criteria, and also run a trace route. And when we run that trace route, it's a TCP trace route. Okay, so this is our own proprietary trace route algorithm that is going to mimic real user behavior as much as possible. It's not just an ICMP trace route. Okay, and what happens as this runs is we get the test results up there as green check marks, and everything's passing really well. And the trace route data is also coming back, and we're taking all that data from the trace route, and we're doing GeoIP lookups on it for every public IP address that we can. We're figuring out whose these servers are and where these servers are. So what that can sometimes help you do is find an issue. So my favorite story here is a large international company that does the digital distribution of media, and they had deployed websites around the world for customers to log on and download. So when you were in Ireland, you were handled by servers in Ireland, right? Reducing your web page load times. What they didn't realize was after they did all those global deployments, they bought security from a company that was routing every request to any of their websites through San Diego, California. Okay? So they had spent a ton of money deploying country-specific servers all over the world for no reason at all, because everything ended up going through San Diego. And they started using TruView Live, and they said, this product's a joke. This is wrong. This doesn't make any sense. And after some research, they realized this product was right. And what they didn't realize was everything was coming back from, even for a user in Ireland, the request was coming back to the United States, going through San Diego before it went back to Dublin to be handled by the real server. So simple example, but this trace route mapping helps us see things like that. We can drill down on the second tab. We can see all the tests that were done. Again, those key performance indicators, the response time breakdown, total responses. And then the third tab is a more detailed drawing of that trace route data. Again, the TCP trace route, the data centers, the ASPs, or ASN numbers for the ISPs, rather, sorry, and all of the hops for every hop that we can get any information about. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's a more detailed version of a web test, including the trace route. Can be really helpful to diagnose some problems, but it's just the souped up version of what we do every minute in our monitoring mode.
I suppose they can PCAP it.
No PCAP right now.
Back when you set up that test, there was an advanced tests category. I was just curious what else was in there.
It's just where you could type in all of the details like you were creating a new test.
Yeah.
If you do that at this page, it would then say there would be a button to let you save it as a new monitoring test.
Right. I was just curious, have you talked about all the different types of tests that are available already, or is there anything in there that...
The ones I talked about, so HTTP, HTTPS, GET, POST, NTLM authentication, basic authentication. You control the headers, you control the POST parameters. Okay. You control the success response code that we expect to come back, text that should be in the response or text that should not be in the response. Okay. Those are the basics. And of course the test interval. Okay, so that's a detailed web test now, but let's go back to the dashboards real quick. And if we go to the enterprise dashboard, we should see that new test that we created a few minutes ago. Right there, and hey, it looks great. So everything is green. We've marked the service packet pushers as yellow, degraded right now, and that's just because we've had some slowness in Frankfurt. Okay? These get a lot more interesting as data comes in. If you scroll over them, you'll see, yeah. The data's starting to come in. So that's what it looks like, and we don't have time to go into every screen and see every option, but that's the basics of what TruView looks like for a existing customer that already has pulses set up in their locations and services configured that they want to monitor. But I want to step back for a minute because part of the point of all this is that TruView Live is network monitoring as a service. And I want to show you what it looks like when you start fresh, okay? So we're going to jump over right now. TruView Live has the concept of a single person, me with my Fluke Networks email address, being a part of multiple organizations, okay? And so I was just in one, and I just kind of switched who I am, and now I'm in another account, but with my same login credentials. Does that make sense? It's great for service providers. They want to set these up for their customers. They can jump in and out of customers and see whatever data they need to. I'm jumping over to another customer that we've created, just signed up for the service, hasn't done anything yet, okay? So what happens when that starts is we land in this new user wizard. We can watch a fun movie and get a feel for what the service can do for me. And after we do that, we can set up, these are just some example SASs that you might want to monitor. This is just to help to get somebody started. So they can pick a couple of these and hit next. And then we're going to show them all of the 9 locations around the world where they can deploy global pulses. And they can pick any of those that they want. Again, they're going to want to deploy pulses on their network to get the most value out of TruView Live, but this is to help them get started. We can invite other users. Inviting users is just extraordinarily simple. Type in their email address, and we'll send them an email and invite them. They register for an account, and then they'll be a part of the same organization. Okay, so they can join you if you want to have some peers you want to bring along. And once I click through those screens, we prepare the user's dashboard. We throw new global pulses up on servers around the world at whatever locations you specify, and they start testing. Okay, and so go ahead. we hit our view the dashboard, and hey, look at that. We've already got pulses deployed in Ireland and Sao Paulo. We've already got 4 SASs that we're monitoring, and we've already got test results, and everything's green. Pretty easy. So that's nice, right? We give the user the idea right away. But again, the point of this is to test from your locations, right? So if the user happened to have a pulse, they would go to the admin menu and then go to the pulses screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to claim this pulse. So if you can see these lights, everything is green, which means we have power over Ethernet link. We've got an IP address. And we can see the default gateway. The top one there is a little cloud icon. It's yellow. And what that means is that this pulse can see the TruView live service. It's reaching the internet, but it is not claimed to an organization yet. Okay? So we're going to look on the back of our pulse, and we see a number there. And my number is 3304FE. Okay? And we can name our pulse anything we want. We hit the claim, and hopefully, hey, look at that. So the pulse has now been claimed. It's now a part of my organization, and it's going to do whatever tests I configure for it to do. Okay? And if you'll notice, that top cloud icon just went from orange to green. Okay? So in our example earlier, we put these in the mail. We send these out to our locations. You know, a 7-year-old could plug this in, watch all the lights turn green, and go, deployed. It's working. And we're done deploying pulses. Let's see. Yeah, so let's go to download virtual pulse. So again, virtual pulses, Windows and Linux options. It's about, I think, 13 meg download. And pull down that file on Windows, run an executable. Linux, you paste a couple lines into a terminal. And if you want to bring your own hardware, the pulse is deployed, and it starts just like the hardware pulse, running all the tests you've configured. The bottom option on this screen is if you don't have access to the hardware that you want to run it on, but somebody else does, type in their email address, specify that you want to send them Windows or Linux instructions. We'll send them an email and say, hey, you know, Brandon asked you to install this. Here's what you do. And we'll just lay out some simple instructions for them. The third option, if we can go back to the pulse screen, is deploying a global pulse. So we already saw this through the new user wizard. But later, after the fact, we go, oh, you know, it'd be nice. You know, we've got that sales guy in Tokyo. It would be nice if we could deploy one in Tokyo. So we can come in here, select the location, give it a name if we want to. Otherwise, we'll name it after the city that it's deployed in, and hit go. And now you've got a pulse running your tests in whatever locations you see fit. So again, very easy. Deploy these things. Takes just a few minutes, and they start running all of your web tests. Let's jump back to monitored services, Jason. And just one more time. So this is where we can create our tests. So again, following the new customer startup, they've selected some tests in the new user wizard, but now they've actually claimed a hardware pulse. It's running from one of their locations. Now what they want to do is they want to set up a test to monitor something they actually use and care about. So they can come in here, type in the details for a test, give it a name and a test interval, specify its success criteria and its schedule, and hit save. And so now they've got pulses deployed, they've got services that they want to monitor configured, and they can go back to the enterprise dashboard and see the results. So there we go. We just set up a new test, GC there, fourth column, and we've already got test results back from all pulses. All the global pulses in data centers around the world, as well as the one hardware pulse that we just claimed. So my new customer just started up. 5 minutes later, they've deployed pulses. They're monitoring their services. Okay? Okay. Well, unless there's any questions, thank you.
So it's not a technical question, but how do you license this?
How do we license this? The licensing is done by the number of locations you want to monitor from and the number of services you want to monitor. So it's the combination of the two. Okay. We sell the number of services you want to monitor kind of in units, and you can pick any number of pulses, locations you want to monitor from that you'd like. I
was just curious because of the flexibility of having a software-only pulse. I would assume it would be tied to a device at least somewhat.
Yeah, so you know, the hardware pulses, obviously there's a hardware cost. We don't charge you for the software to run our virtual pulses, just for the monthly subscription to the service to use those.
Okay, thanks.
So if we had, hold on, if we had, so one location could be a building could have 10 floors.
Yes.
We could have one on every floor,
That's
one on
right.
every VLAN.
So that would be 10, as far as we're concerned.
So it's number of endpoints or number of probes, if you will.
Number of pulses, that's right.
Pulses, okay.
Yeah, in our vernacular, it's the number of pulses.
Right. Not locations.
And
not locations. Typically, people deploy 1 pulse per location, but you're absolutely right. The larger the location, the more pulses you might want to deploy there.
And the global pulses count as well, right?
Global pulses count as well. That's right. So again, you know, we manage them, no charge for the software. It's just the monthly storage of the data, really.
If you do deploy, let's say, the virtual pulse on 100 machines throughout the world, we only pay for 10 licenses. Can you, at any given point in time, activate given pulses?
Yeah, you can. So we didn't spend much time there, but where we went and we claimed the pulse, there was a couple options there. Again, just don't have enough time to show you everything today, but on that screen you can enable and disable pulses. So we have one customer that put a pulse, a virtual pulse, on every person who travels laptop. Right, so he's got like 50 laptops with pulses on them, and then he can just turn those things on and off. So what we care about is the number of pulses running at a given time, not the total number of deployed. So if a sales guy says, hey, I'm having problems, he enables that pulse, collects data for a couple hours, looks at the data, and sees if he can't solve the problem just based on that, you know, minimal amount of effort that it took him to hit enable.
Possibly stupid, related question. Does the pulse agent on those laptops know that they're disabled and therefore stop doing tests?
They do. Okay. So what they do is they continue to talk to TruView Live and see if they should become enabled. Okay. But other than that, they don't do any tests.
Good.
Yeah. So the other option, which is nice, is that if you push those out onto people's laptops, in my example, and you decide later you want to remove them, all it takes is a delete from our screen, and they uninstall themselves from those laptops. So it takes a little bit of work from the person at the machine to install the, you know, the Windows executable. But once it's on there, you can enable it, disable it, update it, and uninstall it all from TruView Live.
Cool.
Nice.
What about other kinds of testing? So you did web testing?
Yeah. We're going to do VoIP testing in a moment.
Okay.
And all the rest, we're excited to build and release to you soon.
Okay.
Yeah. So new service, and we have big plans. Yeah.
I'm thinking database services, things like that.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of, let's say, high throughput planned?
There is. I don't know how much I should talk about this. Do you want to do it? Does a planner want to step in, or
bandwidth benchmarking, or?
Yeah, I would.
So kind of an upload, download, speed test type of thing.
How much traffic can this device generate?
Well, it's gig Ethernet, so it can do a fair amount. I mean, it's not going to saturate your network probably, but we can push some stuff through there and look for problems. Yeah.